Welcome, dear guests, to our Helmholtz Annual Event Brussels. AI in the Green Digital European Research Area is our topic today, and we exceptionally greet you from Berlin, where our studio is set up today. Well, in this virtual edition, we are putting special emphasis on dialogue with our active participants here, and we hope that you join the conversation too. Please feel free to join in via Twitter, use our hashtag HelmholtzEU, and you can hand in questions via Slido. And for those who watch the stream spontaneously and have not registered before, the link is provided next to this video frame. I know there were registrations from all across Europe and far beyond, and there is a poll open on Slido right now that asks about your current location, if you want to try it out. And to all of you watching, there's a special goodie. The lecture translator is an AI-based tool developed by the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, and it provides German subtitles and English captions. Check it out. The link is also next to the video frame. My name is Christine August. I'm your moderator, and with me here today, in good distance, is Annika Thies, the director of the Helmholtz Office Brussels. Welcome, Annika Thies, to this special virtual edition.
Thank you very much. And I would very, very much have liked to welcome all of you in person in Brussels right now, and especially to also have the chance after the panel discussion to exchange with you, to learn about you. And that is important for us. But still, we are very happy that this virtual event gives us at least the chance to have you all here, and possibly even to have people here who wouldn't have been able to come to Brussels. So why this topic? How to stay at the forefront of the developments in artificial intelligence is a massive challenge. It is a challenge at the regulatory framework side, and it's a challenge very much also at the level of the research, a very fast-moving field. That is why we are very, very happy that under the German presidency, we have the chance here to discuss this issue with the stakeholders, with industry, with policy, and with research.
Well, from your special Brussels perspective, what makes European collaboration so important?
For Helmholtz associations, scientists are really very active in European research. You were able to see that. And they are active because it's important for scientists to get results. Borders aren't really very relevant for scientists. And benefiting from collaboration with our European neighbors is just a natural thing to do. It's about benefiting from synergies, from different expertise, from research infrastructures, from access to data sets, from different climate zones, all kinds of reasons. And artificial intelligence is indeed a very good example. The race is on. It's an international race, and we need to be fast. It's about having the best, brightest minds, about shaping developments. And for that, we need to join forces at European level.
Well, we are very glad to have you here, and we will see you again at a later stage of this program. Now, we've taken the German EU Council presidency as an occasion to bring in the perspective of the Federal Ministry for Education and Research. And because of a tight agenda in the presidency and because of Corona, we've met in advance and recorded the following conversation between State Secretary Wolf-Dieter Lucas and Helmholtz President Ottmar Wiesler. English subtitles provided. Please. Wolf-Dieter Lucas, Staatssekretär im Bundesministerium für Bildung und Forschung, und Ottmar Wiesler, Präsident der Helmholtz-Gemeinschaft. Herzlich willkommen. Wir sprechen ja heute über einen grünen digitalen europäischen Forschungsraum. Es soll um Strategien für eine KI, also für eine künstliche Intelligenz der Zukunft gehen. Und vielleicht eine Frage zum Einstieg, Stichwort Aktualität des Themas und Relevanz. Herr Lucas, Herr Wiesler, wie häufig steht denn das Thema künstliche Intelligenz derzeit bei Ihnen beruflich auf der Tagesordnung?
Steht ganz oben, weil die Bundeskanzlerin selbst hat nach KI auf die Tagesordnung gesetzt, und wir werden nicht mehr 3 Milliarden ausgeben, sondern 5 Milliarden, und wir haben eine riesige Chance, was voranzubringen. Und das bedeutet, es gehört zu meinem Alltag, über künstliche Intelligenz zu reden, mit Herrn Wiesler, mit den anderen Präsidenten der Forschungseinrichtung und natürlich auch mit der Wirtschaft und mit Gesellschaft. Wir müssen sehen, dass wir dieses in die Breite bringen.
Also ich kann das nur unterstreichen. Das ist in der Tat ein Thema, was uns ständig beschäftigt. Es gibt ja kaum eine Forschungsorganisation, die so große, komplexe Datensätze erzeugt wie die Helmholtz-Gemeinschaft in allen 6 Forschungsbereichen. Und die Herausforderung ist natürlich die, aus diesen Datenschätzen neues Wissen zu schaffen. Und genau dafür brauchen wir künstliche Intelligenz, lernende Systeme.
Es klingt jetzt schon an, der Fortschritt insgesamt beim Thema künstliche Intelligenz ist sowohl auf politischer als auch auf wissenschaftlicher Ebene ein großes Thema. Lassen Sie uns zunächst den politischen Rahmen adressieren. Herr Lukas, welche Initiativen ergreift die Bundesregierung, um die KI in Deutschland und auch in Europa auf ein weltweit führendes Niveau zu bringen?
Also zunächst erstmal hat die Bundesregierung ja eine KI-Strategie aufgelegt, die sich sehen lassen kann. Wir haben hier finanziell erstmal die richtigen Voraussetzungen gestellt. Der zweite Punkt ist, wir müssen mehr junge Menschen in die Wissenschaft der Informatik hineinbringen, mehr nachher auch in die künstliche Intelligenzforschung hineinbringen. Aber, das haben wir auch gelernt, wir müssen aufpassen, dass wir nicht nur KI-Spezialisten haben, sondern KI-Spezialisten, die auch was von den Anwendungsthemen verstehen. Denn KI und Daten zusammen kann Wissenschaften, aber das Wesentliche ist, sie brauchen qualitätsgesicherte Daten. Wir dürfen nicht denken, dass man mit Machine Learning aus schlechten Daten gutes Wissen generiert. Und dieses Zusammenbringen war ein wesentlicher Punkt. Wir müssen Anwendungen haben, die den Menschen nutzen, wo sie wirklich auch sagen, das ist etwas, wo mir das Leben erleichtert wird. Das ist Gesundheit, das ist Klima, das ist Energie. Und das werden wir im Dialog mit der Wissenschaft und mit der Wirtschaft machen und klug machen.
Herr Wiestler, Herr Lukas hat gerade schon die Brücke geschlagen. Wie können denn große Forschungsorganisationen wie eben Helmholtz diese Prozesse unterstützen?
Wir haben Riesendatensätze in praktisch allen Bereichen und müssen die jetzt klug analysieren. Da ist künstliche Intelligenz, maschinelles Lernen ein ganz, ganz wichtiger Ansatz. Wir haben deshalb vor 3 Jahren bereits diese Struktur geschaffen eines Inkubators, in dem wir versuchen, das gesamte Know-how der Helmholtz-Gemeinschaft zu bündeln über die Grenzen von Zentren und Forschungsbereichen hinweg. Wir müssen die Methoden der künstlichen Intelligenz sehr eng mit unserer Forschung verschränken. Das ist ein großes Thema für unsere großen Forschungsinfrastrukturen, die massiv Daten produzieren. Wenn Sie an die Beschleuniger in der Physik denken, an die Hochdurchsatzuntersuchungen in der Medizin oder die gerade zu Ende gegangene Mosaikexpedition, wo einer unserer Eisbrecher 12 Monate lang durch das arktische Eis gedriftet ist, da sind so unglaubliche Datenmengen erzeugt worden. Die müssen jetzt mit KI weiter analysiert werden. Und was mir auch sehr gefällt an diesem Thema, das ist nun ein klassisches Thema, wo man kooperieren und interagieren muss. Mit Partnern aus ganz unterschiedlichen Bereichen, innerhalb Deutschlands, aber auch innerhalb Europas, international, mit akademischen Partnern genauso wie mit der Wirtschaft. Der Aspekt ist mir auch sehr wichtig. Also es ist ein absolutes Schlüsselthema und wir werden von Seiten der Wissenschaft alles tun, um diese Initiativen, die die Politik so nachhaltig jetzt unterstützt und in Gang bringt, mit Leben zu füllen.
Ich kann das unterschreiben. Ich möchte vielleicht eines hier auch in die Runde bringen, was die wenigsten vielleicht wissen. Wenn ich hinschaue, welches ist die größte KI-Forschungseinrichtung, dann ist es Helmholtz. Keine Einrichtung nutzt so stark KI wie die Zentren der Helmholtz-Gemeinschaft. Sie ist eine, die KI immer auch mit anderen Forschungsthemen verbindet, von der Astrophysik bis runter zur Teilchenphysik, bis runter zu dem Thema Gesundheit, bis zum Thema Klima.
Was wir am Ende brauchen, ist KI direkt da, wo die Daten erzeugt werden. Und in der Kombination kann man aus diesen Daten dann völlig neues Wissen schaffen. Wir müssen uns jetzt überlegen, wo sind die Felder für KI-Anwendungen, wo Deutschland einmalig aufgestellt ist. Da sind solche Felder wie Energiesysteme der Zukunft, Herr Lukas hatte das angesprochen. Das ganze Klimathema, intelligente Modelle, mit denen wir Klimaveränderungen sehr viel besser verstehen, als wir das im Moment tun, wird sehr stark KI-basiert sein. Ganze Felder wie Maschinenbau, Bildverarbeitung und so weiter. Diese Gebiete nehmen wir jetzt in den Fokus und das sind in der Tat auch die, die großes Anwendungspotenzial haben.
Das heißt, das Verweben großer Datenmengen und die Nutzung künstlicher Intelligenz in einem multidisziplinären Umfeld ist heute schon Realität. Wie weit sind die Zentren da? Vielleicht können Sie das noch etwas illustrieren.
Es gibt eine ganze Reihe von guten Beispielen, wo wir Ergebnisse haben. Also wenn Sie an die Erdsystemmodellierung denken, einige der gängigen Modelle der Erdsystemmodellierung, die eingesetzt werden mittlerweile von Wetterdiensten, von vielen anderen Organisationen, sind auf dieser Basis entwickelt. Wir sind in der Medizin relativ weit. Es sind die ersten Algorithmen jetzt im Einsatz, wo man zum Beispiel Früherkennung für Volkserkrankungen wie Diabetes digital abbilden kann. Wir haben Modellprojekte laufen, wo personalisierte Krebsmedizin für die Behandlung einzelner Krebspatienten völlig neu aufgestellt wird anhand der Gesundheitsdaten einzelner Betroffener.
Lassen Sie uns den Raum noch ein wenig weiter öffnen und auch stärker auf Europa blicken. Digitalisierung und künstliche Intelligenz gehören da ja auch zu den Prioritäten des Präsidentschaftsprogramms. Und ein Unterabschnitt befasst sich dort auch mit AI Made in Europe. Herr Lukas, inwiefern können denn die exzellenten Kompetenzen, die derzeit in Deutschland entwickelt werden, auch für die europäische Vorgehensweise in diesem Bereich dienlich sein?
Wir glauben, dass es wichtig ist, dass auf europäischer Ebene diese Zusammenarbeit der Zentren nicht nur finanziell unterstützt wird, sondern auch organisiert wird. Der Bund kann es ermöglichen, die Europäische Union kann es ermöglichen, die Kommission kann es unterstützen, aber das Wesentliche ist, dass wir die Netzwerke der Wissenschaft darunter brauchen. Die sind ja häufig schon vorher vorhanden.
Netzwerke ist hier das Stichwort. Herr Wiestler, auch die Überwindung von Silos ist hier ja immer wieder ein Anliegen. Und wie würden Sie das einschätzen, inwiefern solche Initiativen, wie beschrieben, auch Modell für die europäische Ebene stehen können?
Das Thema KI ist natürlich kein rein deutsches Thema, sondern es ist ein globales Thema. Und es findet ein ungeheurer Wettbewerb auf diesem Gebiet statt. Ich bin ein großer Anhänger dieser Alice-Initiative, wo die Grundidee ja zunächst mal darin besteht, in Europa an einer begrenzten Zahl von Standorten wirkliche Leuchttürme zu definieren, wo KI sehr stark vertreten ist, wo KI nicht nur entwickelt, sondern auch in die Anwendung gebracht wird. Und wenn es uns gelänge, sagen wir mal, dieses auf europäischer Ebene auszurollen, das wäre enorm attraktiv. Auch noch aus einem anderen Grund. Es geht bei diesem Gebiet ja auch darum, wer ist wirklich attraktiv für Talente aus aller Welt. Die brauchen wir nämlich, um die ganzen Möglichkeiten dieser Gebiete auszurollen. Und da könnte natürlich eine Organisation dieser Art eine enorme Magnetwirkung haben für den europäischen Forschungsraum. Also das ist eine Initiative, die lohnt es zu verfolgen. Und wir brauchen natürlich nachhaltige Unterstützung auch auf diesem Weg.
Herr Lukas, es klang schon an, Daten sind da ganz essentiell, Daten sind kostenintensiv, sie sind ein Wettbewerbsvorteil, Sie sprachen auch über Datenaustausch. Inwiefern ist denn die Entwicklung einer intelligenten Infrastruktur für den Datenaustausch auf europäischer Ebene eine wichtige Priorität?
Künstliche Intelligenz lebt davon, insbesondere das Maschinenlernen lebt von der Verfügbarkeit der Daten, aber von qualitativ hochwertigen Daten. Auch es gibt ja einige, die immer sagen, wenn ich viele Daten habe, werde ich schon was draus machen. Ja, da kann man was draus machen, aber ob das dann nützlich ist, ist eine andere Frage. Und deshalb brauchen wir genau den Austausch qualitätsgesicherter Daten in Europa und einer Infrastruktur. Und das ist genau das, was neben den bilateralen und multilateralen Kooperationen von Forschungseinrichtungen jetzt ein Thema ist, das auf der europäischen Agenda steht.
Ich glaube, wir müssen das tun. Also die ganzen Bemühungen um eine European Science Cloud, das Gaia-X-Projekt, was jetzt aufgelegt wird, sind ja alles Bemühungen in diese Richtung. Ich glaube, dass wir das technisch auch schultern werden. Was wir natürlich auch im Hinterkopf haben müssen, wir müssen uns auf Regeln einigen, nach denen wir Daten austauschen können in Europa. Ich glaube, auf vielen Wissenschaftsgebieten sind wir da relativ gut unterwegs, Stichwort Open Science. Es gibt aber natürlich auch Gebiete, wo der Regeln des Datenschutzes im uns im Moment eher etwas bremsen. Da müssen wir drüber nachdenken. Betrifft mein eigenes Gebiet, zum Beispiel die Medizin. Ich anerkenne, dass das besonders sensible Daten sind, mit denen wir besonders sorgfältig umgehen müssen. Aber es kann natürlich auch nicht sein, dass durch Regeln des Datenschutzes ganz offensichtliche Anwendungsmöglichkeiten letztlich nicht genutzt werden. Das ist eines dieser Gebiete, was wir sicher auch auf der europäischen Ebene regeln müssen. Ist übrigens auch eine Frage des internationalen Wettbewerbs. Wir müssen aufpassen, dass wir auf diesen Gebieten nicht zurückfallen.
Ich glaube, es kommt darauf an, wenn man Daten austauscht, dass derjenige, der die Daten nutzt, sie auch so nutzt und in dem Sinne nutzt, wie der sie hergibt, auch sozusagen das beabsichtigt hat. Aber ich glaube, das Entscheidende ist, dass wir ein Regelwerk haben. Jemand, der die Daten hinweggibt einem Dritten, der muss auch wissen, dass der Dritte sich an die Regeln hält. Und ich möchte auch noch erwähnen, die Forschungsdateninfrastruktur, die wir national aufgebaut haben. Das ist, glaube ich, war ein Kraftakt. Hier haben alle Forschungseinrichtungen mitgewirkt. Und Infrastruktur ist nicht nur Hardware, sind nicht nur Computer, sondern Infrastruktur sind auch die Werkzeuge, um mit den Daten umzugehen.
Ich möchte noch über eine der weiteren Prioritäten der deutschen Ratspräsidentschaft sprechen. Und zwar liegt die ja auf der Umsetzung des European Green Deal. Und mit dem European Green Deal hat sich die Europäische Kommission ehrgeizige Ziele gesetzt. Europa soll bis 2050 klimaneutral werden. Welche Rolle spielt künstliche Intelligenz hier in diesem Kontext?
Bezogen auf das Thema Klima ist künstliche Intelligenz natürlich unter zwei Gesichtspunkten sehr wichtig. Wenn man Klimaphänomene erforschen und verstehen will, ist Datenmanagement absolut zentral. Das ist ein Gebiet, was davon profitiert, dass enorme Datensätze untersucht werden können und dass man Modelle für das komplexe Klimagebiet entwickelt. Also es ist ein methodischer Aspekt auf der einen Seite. Auf der anderen ist es richtig, dass die Datenverarbeitung mittlerweile ein großer Energieverbraucher und Konsument geworden ist und damit natürlich auch zur Belastung des Klimas beiträgt, zu Emissionen, zu CO2-Ausstoß und so weiter. Ich glaube, da ist Technologieentwicklung insbesondere gefragt. Überall, auch in den Forschungsorganisationen. Wir haben in Jülich zum Beispiel Entwicklungen laufen, wo wir mit sehr, sehr intelligenten Systemen von Wasserkühlung, sehr leistungsfähige Großrechenanlagen mit einer völlig anderen Energieeffizienz arbeiten können. Es laufen Experimente mit Green IT Cube Konstrukten.
Wie könnten wir uns generell in Richtung einer grüneren Informations- und Kommunikationstechnologie bewegen, auch in der gebotenen Zeit?
Wir müssen dabei einerseits an die Algorithmen denken und zum anderen auch an die Hardware. Und Wettbewerbe zu setzen und zu sagen, hier sind KI-Systeme, wer schafft es, Chip zu entwickeln, bei dem wir nur noch 1/10 des Energieverbrauchs haben, wenn wir dieses KI-System anwenden. Wir planen gerade ein Programm und werden das auch demnächst jetzt veröffentlichen. Da geht es genau um das Thema technologische Souveränität, gepaart mit nachhaltiger Entwicklung. Also da geht es genau um die Frage, wie können wir Technologieentwicklung vorantreiben, aber in Richtung einer nachhaltigen Entwicklung und damit sozusagen möglichst wenig Energieverbrauch und möglichst wenig CO2-Ausstoß und natürlich alle anderen Nachhaltigkeitsziele, auch die soziale und die ökonomische Komponente. Ich glaube, das ist ein neuer Ansatz und das war schon überfällig. Es passt jetzt in die Zeit.
Herr Lukas, Herr Wiestler, vielen Dank für dieses Gespräch. Well, both our guests made strong references to the European level and its importance. And 2020 was another busy year in terms of shaping Europe's digital future. Various strategies were brought forward, data, digital, there was a white paper on AI. We very much appreciate that we will hear about the European Commission's ideas in a short policy impulse. Roberto Viola, General Director of the DG Connect within the European Commission, the floor is yours.
Thanks to the Helmholtz Association for having invited me to address you and to participate to the panel. You said 2020 has been a very busy year in terms of initiatives, and then you rightly so quoted the data strategy in the white paper. on artificial intelligence. But I mean, then just after we entered into one of the most important crises after World War II, if not the most important one, and of course, papers do not win a crisis. I think we have still to draw the line between what we observe and the lesson learned and what we should do on this crisis, because unfortunately we're still in the middle of it. But I dare to anticipate one lesson that we all learned. We thought that our society is a very advanced society when it comes to use of data, artificial intelligence, and computers and all the rest. And this is also, we thought that this is a society that has an answer for everything that could happen to the mankind. Well, welcome to the wake-up call. We are still struggling with this invisible enemy, and all our artificial intelligence algorithm, data, computers are still in the fight. And I think the lesson that I would like to draw is that all this mighty use of data, mighty use of computation power happened basically in the business-to-consumer environment. We have these gigantic data platforms, which are machines which are sophisticated, but I mean, far from delivering, I mean, common good like fighting a pandemic. And of course, it's not their role. So here, there's a public space that we need to occupy clearly, because this is one of the highest responsibilities of Europe, to invest in data, to invest in AI, to invest in computation power, in order to make our society, our economy more and the world more resilient in the future. And this is space for public investment. This is space for public organization in, of course, cooperation with the private sector. But we cannot ask the private sector to solve the problem, which are eminently problems of public governance. And that's why I really think that another turning point into this crisis has been the decision to have a recovery fund. And this recovery fund is an extraordinary decision for Europe. And even more extraordinary is that this fund will go for more than 50% to the two key transformations that hopefully should make our Europe and the world more resilient: digital and green. This is the trademark of our president and our college in terms of this commission aims at changing profoundly our society in terms of green and digital. So it's a generation project rather than a 5-year project. And the fact that most of the recovery fund will be on this, it's a signal that goes exactly in this direction. And I think then this is now the challenge for us. From papers and announcement, we have to now pass into action. And in terms of pass into action, I think we should not be shy about our success, but also reflect how to do more in the future. Some might have noticed that we have announced in the Euro HPC initiative that we have awarded a contract for the fastest AI supercomputer in the world. And there will be, part of the 8 machines that Europe will make Europe the supercomputing, I wouldn't use the word power, but the area where supercomputing will be really available for the scientific community. We have, our president announced, and we presented the next step, which is to go into exascale machine and computing, quantum computing machines, where Europe is in the lead, should maintain the lead. And when it comes to processing power, as you know, one of our objectives, also now European Council objective, is to create a microprocessor, a new generation of processor for AI, which is low power consumption, so it comes in the green direction, and extremely advanced. And this is a project that must be one of the flagship projects of Europe. So this is for the computational power. When it comes to the use of computing and algorithm, I think green and digital are the perfect marriage to use at best AI and computation power to have a greener world and a better world, and also more resilient to pandemic. In this respect, the first thing also is the first time in human history that a medicine agency has approved clinical trials of a molecule which has been selected by a supercomputer. So it's the European Supercomputing Platform, which is a common effort of 13 different member states, federating all our best supercomputers plus AI, that selected the raloxifene as a molecule for further tests, and now it has been authorized for clinical trials. So this is a token to what it means using AI and computing at the service of mankind. Now, when it comes to green to digital, our flagship project is called Destination Earth. So imagine the Earth as a spaceship, and you have a controls, what's going on. And this is a bit the idea, in simple words, to make sure that every process of the Earth can be modeled, can be understood with data, of course, and computing, and we are able to predict what is going to happen in many different ways, in terms of the evolution of our environment, the evolution of our cities, and of course, pandemics. This is a project where we call everybody to participate and to contribute. Of course, the machine side, so all the computing centers, but also all the scientists and all the communities that have an application, something to offer. And of course, we will use the European Science Cloud as a kind of the aggregator. And I think this also is an offer open to the world to participate, to model, to understand better our environment and our Earth. And of course, we will do the same with our human body to create the twin of our human body to understand much better how things work. So we are not being maybe prepared. Our, let's say, the commercial AI was not fit for purpose when it comes to fighting this pandemic. But I think we are preparing to be a different society. And I think the debate of today and what the Helmholtz Association does and all the scientists which are connected are exactly going in this direction. And so we should move, and that's what we are doing, by the way, from papers to action. Last point is data, data, data. We are about to present our Data Governance Act, which will be about sharing the data as much as possible, and making sure that nobody can prevail over other people. So creating neutral brokering data donation schemes in order to be sure that every scientist, every community can profit from data sharing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Roberto Viola, and we will see you in a minute in our panel debate and can further elaborate on that. We now turn to science, and we know that many of our viewers, as also indicated in the poll, have some relation to the scientific community. And as it was indicated before, many Helmholtz centers are active in the field of digitalization, AI, information, and to show you one example of how this translates into specific research missions, there's a short video by Forschungszentrum Jülich. Please. And now I do have the opportunity to speak about smart digitalization with Wolfgang Marquardt. He is the chairman of the board of directors at Forschungszentrum Jülich, and he is also Helmholtz vice president for the research field Key Technologies Information. Well, Wolfgang Marquardt, what is your impression of the points raised so far? Is there anything of particular importance to you?
Yeah, I want to remind us that the State Secretary Lucas and our President Ottmar Wiesler referred to a variety of perspectives on digitalization in particular. And I think they clearly worked out that digitalization is much more than computer science and software. Its transformative nature requires both the collaborative efforts of all the scientific disciplines, but also the mobilization of all the stakeholders in society. And as Director General Roberto Viola pointed out, the success of digitalization relies on technology, on hardware and software. And in Europe, there is the need and the necessity to cooperate across the European member states to master the enormous challenges which are ahead of us, to put Europe in a strong position and not to risk the loss of digital sovereignty.
Yeah. Being the vice president for information, what does information mean and how does this connect to AI and a green digital future?
Well, information in general is understood to be an abstraction which is encoded by means of a representational formalism to allow its transmission, its processing and storage, either on a syntactic or a semantic level. Information is always tied to a physical representation, namely to all the possibilities and the restriction of our real physical world, its laws of physics and its storehouses of the available parts. Helmholtz research exploits and translates this perspective on information in its research agenda. We are working on exploration of all the degrees of freedom in the real world, the physical and biological world, for handling information properly and efficiently, for inventing, designing, and demonstrating information technologies, algorithms, software, hardware, to capture this notion of information. And finally, these computational tools need to be exploited in discovery and problem solving and research and practice. AI, and in particular machine learning, is one of such computational tools with disruptive potential, as we say, which not only relies on clever algorithms encoded in software, but also dedicated hardware to facilitate energy efficient processing, ultimately in millions, in billions of dedicated processing units, which will characterize autonomous driving, the Internet of Things, smart grid, smart homes, as well as personalized precision medicine. Green IT is a necessity to make AI and the vision of AI really happen, and hence it's absolutely key in a European digitalization or AI strategy.
Well, and also mentioning research across domains, why is that so essential and how to address it properly?
In Helmholtz, we span really across many, maybe all of the important scientific domains in our work on the digital transformation: biology, physics, materials science, technology, algorithms, models, and applications. And we do this ideally in a co-design spirit, to achieve powerful applications with significantly increased performance and at the same time complying with the sustainability goals. Also, the novel and green hardware concepts require interdisciplinary research because we want to exploit and need to exploit the laws of nature comprehensively. And only this way we will be able to achieve radically different computational paradigms, including quantum or neuro-inspired neuromorphic computing or modular supercomputing at the exascale with an architecture which is ideally self-adapting to specific demanding problems. These computing technologies also require new programming and software engineering models and paradigm in order to come up with disruptive applications. Applications in machine learning, simulation, and optimization, and thus call for strengthening computer science capability capabilities at Helmholtz and others beyond the current status.
Well, I know you perceive Helmholtz to be both an enabler and a beneficiary of digitalization. Why is that exactly?
Yeah, the title of that interview has, I think, already been nicely captured by the conversation in the beginning of our session by Wolfgang de Lucas and Ottmar Wiesler. Their different perspectives on digital transformation revealed that research is and should indeed be an enabler and a beneficiary of the digital transformation at the same time. An enabler of digitalization to provide data, models, algorithms, software, hardware, for applications, and a beneficiary of digitalization, well, to employ these frontier digital technologies in problem solving, in particular in scientific discovery, to create data-centric products and services, to create autonomous and intelligent systems, or knowledge-based diagnosis and decision-making systems in energy, production, or medicine. The competences and capabilities of the enablers on the one hand and the beneficiaries on the other hand are bridged by digital research infrastructures, which constitute a technology-oriented topic of research in its own, but most importantly, a user facility for the scientific community and for industrial users at the same time. 3 examples for enablers and the related beneficiaries in the light of these infrastructures are as follows. The supercomputers and the data centers at the exascale facilitate extreme scale data and model-centric applications across all the Helmholtz research fields. Second, research data infrastructures offer fair data collections which facilitate a transparent aggregation and linkage, as well as analytics across diverse and heterogeneous data sets in an interoperable manner. For example, linking air quality data with epidemiological data, for example, in respiratory diseases. And third, research software infrastructure offer community codes, pre-configured software components, AI-enabled service and products, or high-level programming tools and software engineering environments to empower scientists and practitioners in their respective fields to build applications which will make a difference. And all, in a sense, all these applications somehow relate on a model of the real world, a digital twin of the object of interest. And this is in materials characterization, where we try to model and twin the synchrotron, a pedestrian crowd in a subway tunnel, the pandemic, or the European grid for monitoring. Allow me a final word of caution. We need to realize the transformative nature with lots of opportunities, but also significant risks. Digital technologies and in particular scalable AI are not only a magic wand, but can become a threat to mankind. They may limit or even disable self-determination. They could facilitate manipulation and control of individuals, groups, or even nations. Ethical reflections, public and political debate, enabled by scientific evidence are, in my opinion, essential to reach consensus on the global scale on the do's and don'ts of digitalization, and in particular AI.
Well, thank you very much, Wolfgang Marquardt, for having shared these insights on the potential, but also bringing up the risks. And thank you very much for having contributed to this event. And we will take all these previous impulses, of course, with us and discuss them further in our panel debate. And please, dear viewers, feel free to join the conversation via Slido or also to comment via Twitter. And I now welcome Ottmar Wiesler here with me on stage. He is now live in the program. Welcome. And I've also got high-level experts from science and policy with me here on our hybrid stage, so to say. Welcome to all of you, and we just imagine the warm applause normally directed to you at this point. Let me briefly introduce you. Who are our panelists? Our panelists are Maria Carvalho, a member of the European Parliament and active, amongst others, in the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence in a Digital Age. She's also the former Portuguese Minister of Science and herself a professor, and she says, and I quote, "For all of this in this topic, access to data is the prerequisite. I strive for better common standards within an overarching ethical AI framework." Then I may present Laure Lebert. Welcome. She holds degrees in mathematics, computer science, economics, and she brings in at least two perspectives, being the vice president of the Big Data Value Association, public-private partnership, and she's a research director at SAP Research and Innovation. And her opinion, partnerships between industry and research should boost EU competitiveness and include societal and environmental aspects. Welcome. Then I may introduce Fabian Theiss to you. He has a background in mathematics, physics, computer science, and is director of the Institute of Computational Biology at Helmholtz Zentrum München. And he's also the scientific director of Helmholtz AI, a special cooperation unit focused on artificial intelligence. And he says, well, my vision for our data-based future is to democratize access to AI and machine learning to maximize research impact. And we are happy that he also joins the discussion, Roberto Viola, whom we've seen before, Director General of DG Connect in the European Commission. And he says, well, making AI greener is not only an ecological imperative, but also a real growth opportunity for Europe. And with these words, I hope that you, dear viewers, have a good first impression of our panelists. And to start, I would like to ask our virtual panelists, if we want to make further progress in the field of AI, we'd like to hear one brief example drawn from your own work experience. What do you see as the key challenge that needs to be met, or where can we make the best progress? Maria Carvalho, would you like to start?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today in this excellent panel to discuss AI. I would say that we need to progress to strengthen the AI ecosystem in Europe, and I would include there the infrastructure for edge performance computing and also data infrastructure, as it was said, very important to have the data infrastructure, plus the skills. We need skills, we need skills at two levels, to have more specialists and to attract more people to this area, including women, and also to give the basic knowledge of AI to the general population is very important, both in the digitalization, but specific on AI is also very important. And not to forget to pursue, to continue invest in research. We need to continue to invest in the basic research that supports all the science that in the end, all together we call AI, because it's a combination of many things, and we need to feed in new ideas, the advancements through more and more investment on basic research that will give the advancements on AI. So all this together is what I call the ecosystem for AI, and we need to work and invest in all this infrastructure, skills, research, and I hope that the recovery plan, as Robert Viola said, will be a good tool to continue to invest in all of that. Also the EU budget, that we hope to have good news today for a better investment for Horizon Europe and all the digital Europe, but also the recovery plan that the member states, each of the individual member states, really invest in digitalization, in artificial intelligence, and provide the infrastructure and the skills that Europe needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Laure Lebert, what would be your example drawn from your work experience?
So probably I will, you mentioned it, I will explain this example. So big data value association and partnership. This is very interesting because it brings really together industries, large industries, SMEs and startups, together with academics, so university research centers, RTOs, etc. And that's, I mean, we have more than 6 years experience now to bring together those different people on the technology aspect is on one side, also on the different domains. So health is one topic, transport and mobility, geospatial, etc. So there could be different domains where we really bring all those actors together. And this ecosystem is really powerful and efficient. So it's not only about a project and answering to project calls from the EU Commission. It's really having this exchange and helping on both sides, the research and the business on the other side. And that includes as well, it could be a full project or it could be directly. We have this digital innovation hubs in Europe. Or we call it data space, but that's also really powerful where there is those exchange in each DIH, but it could be also between those different hubs. So that's really interesting. And the association itself, the ecosystem, is open, inclusive. There are trust between the different members. Of course, we pay attention to the information we exchange. There's no question here. But really, the idea is to boost European economy. So, of course, when we talk about data or AI, is sovereignty, leadership is of course important. We also act. I mean, there is a working group, but we also at different occasions exchange and acted on ethics, everything related to privacy, to transparency, to explainability. So that's concern AI as well as data. I mean, for us, somehow is interlinked, and you cannot do AI if we don't have data and vice versa. So that's important. And I may say this PDVA is transforming as we speak into DIRO, data, AI, and robotics, and we really expand the ecosystem. So we bring together BDVA, EU Robotics as association, but also Euro AI, Elise, and Claire are working together for the future partnership, which is really on AI, on data, and on robotics, so all the three together. So that's probably the most important experience that we have.
Thank you. Fabian, Thijs, what would be your example? What's your experience?
Yeah, hi, thanks first for the opportunity of being here and talking such a high-profile panel. It's really exciting to get all these perspectives. You know, I like to do science in my specific field. We're doing molecular biology, trying to understand how cells function. There's a whole bunch of data being generated where there's all kinds of cool questions being made. I think fits very well to this discussion. You're asking though about the key challenges, and I think this is quite a bit about structure. And I think sort of attaching a little bit to what Maria just said. I think in the end we have a whole bunch of cool data sets, particularly in Helmholtz, and we're producing all these fantastic data sets with this great infrastructure. We have a whole bunch of cool computing. Now we need to sort of take that oil of the 21st century, all this data, and put it into the engine. The engine is AI. When we talk about AI, de facto, we mean machine learning. So we need to basically leverage now these complex things, put it together with model and make more of it. And I'm happy to give one example from research, but I think you asked about the challenge. I think the key challenge is really to get the best people on that field. When I started doing machine learning, this was already like 20 or so years ago, this was boringly called statistics, and not many people cared. And just, I guess, in these past 5 years or so, we sort of hit this perfect storm of this advancement in computation, in data size, as well as in algorithmic challenges, in particular deep learning. I think the notion that even general public, these neural networks have heard about, right, is really transforming. It's a complete paradigm change for many application areas. So we're now in need of those people on all levels, those brightest minds who can actually leverage this and then enable in all those different application areas this next step and those next big impact things. And this could be health, which is what I'm focusing on, but it could be, of course, about climate change and so on. And I think for these, we cannot continue, as unfortunately often we do, to sort of try to do everything. I think we need focus areas, and we need to very carefully select those and then actually invest in these. We're doing this sort of from the start. For example, we are setting up a school, Munich School for Data Science. We're now trying to hire those people on small levels on the PhD level, also doing education, master and bachelor programs. And also on the side, trying to go to schools and try to get kids into that thing. I think Laura and Marie, we just discussed, right? How do we get kids actually in that field? But I think it gets obviously harder the higher you go up. Those top machine learning experts, how do you get those? How do you fill all those professorships that are now popping up? It's not just about money. I think it has to be really this ecosystem, I think, that we talked about. How do we generate those? I think this Alice network that Ottmar Wiesler was already mentioning in the beginning, that could be one of those places. Maybe we can build a few of those lighthouses with very specific topics, where then sort of light enough is being generated that people from all over the world are then happy to converge and go into these things. And if these ecosystems work out, if you get those people together, we try to sort of push strongly for that with our health AI focus in Munich. Then actually also the whole interaction with industry and the whole downstream benefits are coming along. So I'm really excited to see how we can select and then build upon those focus areas, potentially with Alice Institutes, potentially within Helmholtz, for example, with this Helmholtz AI unit and other structures.
Thank you. Yeah, and we will have the opportunity to speak more about the networks in a minute. Roberto Viola, what's your example that you would like to bring in?
Well, I would have many. We have in our white paper for artificial intelligence identified two ecosystems. One is the ecosystem of excellence, and the other one is the ecosystem of trust. And they are complementary, also answering a little bit in a sort of way to what was said about be careful about AI. I think the approach, let's welcome AI, but let's make sure that, the risks are understood, is exactly the way we should go. And then when you look at what is inside both, there's a lot of cooperation which is needed. When you look inside, the first one, we need those network of excellence centers, scientists, such as those that have been quoted and others, to work together. We need to create a federation of excellence centers, as very much we do now with the high-performance computing centers that are federated within the EuroHPC initiative. We welcome to create this AI federation, and we welcome the idea to create excellence within excellence. So, and once again, European funds and recovery funds can help in building this cooperation. When you go to the other ecosystem, the ecosystem of trust, to trust something, you need, in general, a 4I principle. So there's a producer of the algorithm, there's somebody that should be able to check. This is the basic notion of trust that we have in our society. Now, unfortunately, there are very little centers in Europe that can test, evaluate, and give an independent assessment of AI algorithm. But we should go in this direction. So the other federation of centers we are trying to create is a federation of testing facilities and evaluation centers for AI. One could be the other. There's not really a borderline between Federation of Research Center and Testing Center. But some of those we like to think are more specialized in creating this kind of third-party validation. Let me give you a practical example. We have the CE marking for medical devices. Fine. And so, for instance, when introducing, and we did this during the crisis, AI for evaluation of medical imaging, we are looking for devices which are CE marked. But the CE marking today doesn't give any indication about the performance of the algorithm. So working with the hospitals, we discovered that there are a number false positives, likely very little false negative. And so the issue about the performance of the algorithm, it's really a crucial one. So you need a third party. You need, in whatever is the introduction of AI, you need, as we do with many other things. So that's why I'm saying two types of cooperation are necessary. The cooperation in terms of research and sharing, I mean, the results of research and creating common models such as the digital twin of the Earth, but at the same time, create the possibility to evaluate the algorithms, to test the algorithms from an independent point of view. And for both, we need the research community.
Mr. Wiesler, we need the research community. Right? Fabian Theis, please.
Yeah, I was just about to say, so whenever we write papers, of course, I think, Roberto, you had a very good point. We have to basically then validate those data sets. So typically, those algorithms, we take an independent data set and then try to see if that algorithm performs equally well. I guess what you're saying, though, is that would not be sufficient if that's not only for, let's say, a scientific publication, but then also if you want to bring this into clinics, or is that a key point?
Exactly, that's the point. I mean, if you actually bring the product into hospital scenery, I mean, somebody should have said that the algorithm is really good. I mean, it functions. So part could be a self-declaration, part could be a number of things, but independent checking is also very important as part of the system, I mean, of trust. So, as always, I mean, you have a bit of self-assessment, a bit of oversight by regulatory bodies, and testing by third parties, and you are absolutely right. By the way, I must say that peer reviews during the corona crisis are sometimes optional, and the newspaper pick up all sorts of announcement about this. And this is something we have to be very careful, I mean, on this.
Well, the question in the room is, how can we measure whether an AI tool is safe, reliable, ethical even? But Mr. Wiesler, would you like, the importance of research was addressed as well in the framework around. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, I mean, sort of asking for the real grand challenges ahead of us as the European research area, I think this is really about establishing a powerful creative ecosystem for AI and AI applications. We have a lot of scattered excellence within Europe, at many sites, at many institutions, in many of the member states. But what it really takes to develop into one of the driving forces for applied AI is really joining forces between the strongest and the best players within Europe. It is also about combining expertise in AI algorithms, machine learning, and deep learning. But at the same time, we also need to sort of establish new interactions between AI experts and experts in application fields. This is the only way to make sure that we are among the leading sort of players in fields such as digital health, climate modeling, development and design of new energy systems, just to name a few examples. And the final point, I think, is the one which Fabian Theis made. This is, at the end of the day, all about talents and creative people. And if we want to be successful here, we must develop Europe into a magnet for the greatest talents in this area from all over. And we also must train the next generation of data scientists in this context. Young people who combine two major sort of skills in their brain. One is expertise in information processing, AI, algorithm development, and the other one is expertise in one given application field. This could be medicine, it could be chemistry, it could be social science, because at the end of the day, it is really about bringing together the AI world on one hand and the exciting application fields on the other. And this, I feel, is clearly a task for Europe, because at the end of the day, it will boil down to a competition between three major areas. One is certainly the United States. The second one is China. And the third player must be Europe if we wake up in time.
Well, let us speak then about partnerships and networks at the European level. Fabian Theis, what kind of partnerships do we need from your perspective? This was also one of the questions I know that was from the audience.
I think it's a good question. What networks do we need? I would like to argue that if you're a machine learning researcher nowadays, you're not really money starved, right? You can get quite a lot of different areas. So I think the challenge is to really have impact. And that's why what I like about this discussion, you have to have a combination of really cool, potentially novel, unique data set and a good research question. You have to have this domain expert, so to speak. And then next to the domain, in my case, for example, trying to understand how one fertilized egg cell can make a whole body, right? How do cells make decisions? I think it's a totally fascinating question and has major impact for all kinds of diseases. For example, us now applying this to understand where COVID receptors are for this virus, particularly distributed in the body. So there's all kinds of things that you can do with that. So how do you answer those questions with the right set of infrastructure and people around? And I think education is definitely one place. I think, though, that these methods, they have been around for some time. Just in the discussion beforehand, I had the opportunity to speak to Maria Carvalho, and she said she's a signal processing expert. You know, these tools, they have been around. In many cases, whenever we speak nowadays about machine learning, there's something like linear models that already do quite good a job, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a strong education for that, but only in some disciplines. So how can I now enable my medical or biological partners here at my Helmholtz Center Munich, but maybe also in the larger Helmholtz Association, how can we enable them to make the best use of the methods, of the data sets? So we need to bring the methods to those people. And I think to do that robustly, it can't be sufficient that you essentially require everyone to read up on all topics of data science. We somehow need to really demystify this thing that is often called AI, but in many cases is a simple linear model, maybe a neural network. But those are things that are now also nowadays easy to understand. But how do we build sort of these networks? In Helmholtz AI, we set up this thing we call AI consultants, which is essentially something like a service type of collaboration partner, a new profile where people, maybe when they finish their PhD project, they don't know yet whether they want to go to industry or want to stay in science. They can sort of reach out and, like a consultant, go in those projects and very often reap the benefits of those fantastic data sets by basically adding those particular models on top of it. And having such an agency, I sometimes call it like Airbnb, sort of the science and matching to projects, some sort of dynamic matching of data science experts and data generators in a dynamic fashion. I think that would be something we could have. And there's, of course, all kinds of networks for doing so.
Well, this is what you were saying about Helmholtz AI. You were also mentioning the need for lighthouses earlier, mentioning the network Alice, and to allow everybody to better understand what Alice is actually about. We included the short video on the Helmholtz, on the Alice unit in Munich. Please.
Many people think of Munich as just the home of the Oktoberfest, but there's so much more going on in Bavaria's capital, especially when it comes to AI. Welcome to Alice Munich. Here at the Alice Munich unit, we focus on developing novel machine learning methods and deploying them in biomedicine, computer vision, and Earth observation. The Alice Munich faculty brings together an outstanding team of experts that will grow over time, building a dynamic community.
Our scientists tackle the great challenges of AI and the development of robust, reliable algorithms to advance machine learning as a core research field.
We are committed to train the next generation of machine learning experts, focusing on mathematical and algorithmic foundations of machine learning and a range of societally relevant application areas.
Alice Munich integrates expertise from the Technical University of Munich, one of Europe's leading universities, and Helmholtz Munich, one of Europe's leading health research centers. We also draw on the strengths of the Munich Data Science Institute and the Helmholtz AI network. Our unit contributes to the Alice programs on computer vision, health, and earth and climate, and is always open and looking for opportunities. Munich offers ready-made connections to industry and society. Our goals also align and create synergies with the Bavarian AI strategy and high-tech agenda, which sets up an AI competence network to enhance knowledge transfer from research to practice. We have expertise, access to unique and relevant data, a nurturing ecosystem, and the ability to generate industrial partnerships.
Well, and I like to ask Laure Lebar, because you also have a very specific viewpoint on collaboration, and you say, well, science and industry should collaborate, but how should they ideally work together? Maybe also considering what Fabian Theis just told about other networks.
So as I mentioned before, the experience we have through the association, so there are different groups, working groups, or task forces, as we call them, and in each of these groups there will be different topics. So it could be technology oriented, so really specific on specific technology. It could be on ethic, or it could be on a specific domain. And in each group, I mean, in the association altogether, but in each group as well, universities and research centers and industries, SMEs, largely coming together, and that's really specialists in each of this field, in each of these working groups. So that's a really good starting point. Of course, then we have all the projects which are part of the PPP, or the BDV PPP, and we have about 50 projects or so. Some same way, they are specific to a certain domain. Maybe to refer to the topic of the day, we have this data bio, it's called. So it's all about agriculture, but everything related to fisheries and agriculture, and all the chain from the production to the, as we say, from the field to the fork. So that's one way to collaborate. And if we mention skills, that's eventually what we can talk about. So having the industry explaining what type of skills do they need to what they want to do, and on the other side having the university explaining what they can provide or not, and come to some agreement. So that could be a best way. And those data innovation hub I was mentioning are more concrete, and this is not just infrastructure, it's really ecosystem where people can discuss together. A startup can maybe use the computer. They don't have the technology, but they can use it to develop their application.
Well, I would like to speak a bit about technology. Brief assessment, please. What role do infrastructures play?
Access to technology. Yeah. Because it's, I mean, SAP as a large industry doesn't have any issue on this, but there could be SMEs or startups. They are good on the application side, but they don't have the big infrastructure. At least on the research step, they can have access to those infrastructures. So that could be helpful.
Well, I would like to know, maybe Maria Carvalho can speak about that as well. Do science and industry need the same digital infrastructures, and how do you address that problem or that challenge in the parliamentary work?
Thank you. But first, let me just comment to what has been said on the need to demystify artificial intelligence. I fully agree. And because in the end is putting together many things that some of them are very well known for some years, and probably the best way is to give capacity to the people, not only to the specialists to have more professionals, but to give the basic knowledge to the population. And that is very important, that we demystify so that people are not afraid. The population in general and some of the politicians. I see the tendency of some of my colleagues in the European Parliament, but also in national parliaments, being somewhere a bit worried about artificial intelligence. It's like to be worried of new technology or science. Of course, there are always risks. But we have a strong ethical framework. We have ethical groups, both at European level and national levels, that will guide the development of this science and new technologies. And that is important, that we don't create a wave of negative wave towards AI. And this is through more people knowing what is AI, getting used to it, because I want to quote, we had a hearing in the European Parliament with one of the most well-known specialists on AI, and she's Portuguese but professor in the United States, Manuela Veloso, has told us, if we don't get acquired to AI, it's like not to know or to read and write of the present. So we will be completely excluded from our not only the economy, but our day-to-day life. So it's very important that we give these steps in the right direction, and we don't create also, I know that what Mr. Viola has explained is a very interesting centers of excellence and the centers of for the validation. But we need to be careful in the part of the validation not to create a over complex system that would give some barriers to the development and to scare some of us on what is AI. So I agree that needs to be done, but at the same time we have to pass this positive message to AI. Now on your question, do we have time to answer? Very, very short. There are some infrastructures that are more required from research, but we both require access to computer power and to data infrastructure. And we have in our system, in the framework programs, the public partnerships, like the joint undertakings. Now we are going to evaluate the high performance computing joint undertaking. That has proved to be a very good system, and I think that we should continue with this system. We had some very interesting programs in Horizon 20 projects in Horizon 2020. That was the FET flagship projects that unfortunately didn't continue in Horizon Europe, like the quantum computing, and there we need to do something, because there are areas like quantum computing that needs to be supported. I know that member states like Germany is very much supporting, but we should be also supported at European level. So we hope to find a solution also for these areas to be supported at European level, because I know that they get the money somewhere else, but we all gain if this is done at European level with collaboration with member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I had the impression, Mr. Wiesler, you were nodding and wanted to comment.
Well, I think the issue with a public acceptance is certainly a critical one, and this is about communication. People probably expect us to establish a proper legal framework, and in particular, convincing examples. There's so many fascinating examples for digital health applications, for climate modeling, for robotics. This is probably the most convincing. As far as infrastructure is concerned, this is not only about computing infrastructure, it's also about infrastructure which generates enormous amounts of complex data, which is of course a specific topic for the Helmholtz Association. Accelerators, in metaphysics, satellites which produce a wealth of information, or some of the high throughput medical data production devices. And these are, of course, the source for large data sets which we need to employ artificial intelligence. So the infrastructure topic here is a very broad one.
Well, let us speak about the European Green Deal, also very much a topic of public concern. Roberto Viola, what role would you expect from the other stakeholders present here to play regarding the Green Deal? What wishes do you have? I think I see a freeze frame. So I direct the question to the other panelists. Do you, when it comes to the European Green Deal, Laure, do you have wishes how the other stakeholders present should work together with SAP, with BDVA?
I maybe didn't want to answer directly to the question and keep it for Roberto, but I wanted to maybe put it on a positive note. In terms of sorry, I hear two things in the headset. In Europe, we should not forget, we talk a lot about access to data, etc. There is all this field of industry data, so private basically, where this is where Europe is pretty strong, or we call it B2B, obviously. And this is where a lot of things happen as well. And this is where the public is maybe not really aware of it. But we have to keep the strength here that we have in Europe as well. So it doesn't mean because it's industry that it's not with a lot of ethics and explainability, it's still valuable. But that's where, I mean, on the positive note, this is where we can do a lot. And especially on the Green Deal, on energy efficiency, etc., there's a lot of things that each company can do. And this is a competitive advantage that we have as well. If you work on sustainability in the broad sense, that could be good for any company. So that may be public, but that's happening as well. And this is also something where we could help each other.
Right. I think Roberto Viola is with us again. Roberto Viola, I was asking, what role would you expect the other stakeholders present here to play regarding the Green Deal, if you could utter wishes?
Thank you. But before answering your question, which I will do, of course, let me come back to some of the points I heard. The first one, I want to reassure Madame Carvalho that quantum is very much present as one of the key objectives for the European Commission. So the new Euro HPC regulation has two main objectives, three actually, more capabilities in exascale machines. The second one is to network all the supercomputers and connect it to the science cloud. The third one is to create a network of quantum computing and to go for hybrid machines quite quickly. So not only we are serious, but also we have a clear objective that the successor to an exascale machine will be an hybrid quantum machine. When it comes to the research, we will go ahead in the Horizon, so all the activities of the flagship will continue in Horizon. And the third element is that we have now 25 partners in terms of member states for our initiative on quantum communication, which is called EuroQCI. Fourth, and that's now a call for the member states, we clearly indicated in the guidelines for the Recovery Fund that investment in quantum infrastructure are very welcome, also as projects that can come from more than one country. So, and if you take, I mean, what is the RRF in terms of funding, you arrive to the conclusion that Europe can be not only intellectually, because this is already the case, a quantum superpower, but it also in terms of infrastructure, scientific community building, and projects. So for us, quantum remains very much with a capital Q in the future. Now, coming to your question, which is a bit linked to again, the debate, I heard very little the word Europe from many of the panelists. Everybody, it's a bit kind of isolated citizen, maybe it's part of the lockdown, and does not belong to the same community. And Europe is not simply a supermarket. You come, you get a bit of a research grant, and then you forget about it. I think we have collectively the duty to listen to what are the common ideas, to comment, to disagree, but to be active. And maybe, of course, it's also our limitation. I find very little feedback from what we do, what we write, what we want to do. I think, so the start of the answer to your question is that, first of all, I would really like the community of stakeholders to understand the interlinkage between green and digital policies, to comment on what we are proposing, to disagree, to propose other things, because this is the only way we can advance. So what is clearly on offer right now on the table? What is clearly on offer is the high synergies, especially in computing, in algorithms, in AI, to understand the planet Earth and the human being, creating digital twins. What is clearly on offer is AI as a clear complement to have smart energy grids and alternative generation of power, and many other things which create on the hydrogen project, create a greener world. I think all of this, when it's on offer, and I stop here because I listen that you start to be impatient because of time.
Yes, because, thank you very much, because I very much like to include one more question from the audience, and I would kindly like to ask you for a very brief assessment so that we can also do a proper wrap-up. I'd like, the question was, how can AI really contribute to the green transition in the coming decades, not only in the little bit, but in the decades? Brief assessment, who shoots first?
I can start if you want.
Yes, please. It's not an easy question.
No, I will try to be short. So I think that we can make use much more of the AI than we are doing now. First, as it was said in the beginning, in the climate science, we need AI to understand the huge data generate and to understand climate. And on the energy, on the mitigation on climate, this mitigation could be helped using much more AI than we do in smart cities, smart grids, energy efficient, simple solutions of AI can be used in the homes and in the factory and the enterprise to improve the energy efficiency. And lastly, the third component is to make digital and AI much greener, so less energy consuming in what we do in AI to be more green. So 3 levels that we can couple AI with the greening of the planet. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And it's really time to wrap up our discussion. You were bringing a lot of different points. You were, we could certainly see also the linkages between your specific fields of expertise. And I quoted you by a short sentence in the beginning, and I want to give you the chance to readjust it or to add another quote, a brief quote. If you reflect on today's discussion, what second quote would you like to take home? Roberto Viola, you may go first.
Thank you. Thanks. I was not prepared. I would say we need more than ever in Europe, and the future of Europe is in green and digital.
Thank you very much. We do it reverse this time. Fabian Theis, please.
At Helmholtz, we have great scientists, great infrastructure, and some of the coolest, also biggest data sets in the world. I'm convinced that with AI and machine learning, we can do more with those.
Thank you. Lalaba, what would be your point?
Yeah, definitely we can use IT to help us. So we mentioned this efficiency, etc. This could be something, we have to be creative here, not just apply or improve what we do already, but really be creative. And this is where bringing everybody together in the system would help.
True. And Maria Carvalho, what second quote should we take home from you?
I would choose AI for all through more education and skills.
Yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Wiester was nodding here. I thank you all very much for bringing in your thoughts and your expertise, and imagine the applause to all of you. Thank you very much. And maybe you have the occasion to watch the rest of our event. It's time for the finale. Annika Thies, welcome back. And let's have a quick look at the next steps and give a general outlook together with Ottmar Wiesler. Ottmar Wiesler, well, we were speaking about it, and European collaboration is certainly of high importance. What would you comment on that?
Well, you see, for us in the Helmholtz Association, an organization which probably generates more complex large data sets than any other organization in Europe, it's very clear that we must generate entirely new knowledge from these huge and enormous data sets. Within the organization, we do this by systematically sort of joining forces between the best. We have established this incubator for information and data science, where the 100 leading data scientists in the organization meet every 3 months to jointly sort of develop disruptive new ideas, establish platforms for AI. One is headed by Fabian Theis. And last but not least, make sure that we train the next generation of data scientists, which we desperately need in this area. And I would propose that we basically apply the same idea to the European level. Mm-hmm. That is, make sure that we exploit Europe as probably one of the richest sources for extremely valuable data sets in all the major sort of territories and fields. Make sure that we join forces between the best sort of players and partners in a given area. This is why I'm a big fan of the Alice idea, because that would be an ideal starting point to make that happen. And of course, last but not least, make sure that Europe develops into one of the most fruitful application fields for AI, because that's what it is all about at the end of the day. If we want to create wealth, if we want to make sure that Europe is the major player in this given area, and I'm deeply convinced this is only possible when we manage to intelligently sort of team up and join forces. This is clearly a topic for long-term cooperation. So let's try to do it.
And a framework in Europe for all of that is the European Research Area. Annika Thies, what does the European Research Area mean to Helmholtz?
Primarily, it means a chance to really collaborate in Europe in research. And that, of course, is something we've seen today, which is essential for us. And one living example of the commitment of Helmholtz for that is actually the existence of the Helmholtz Brussels office. It's set up, indeed, as Roberto just asked us to agree, to disagree, to step up and to engage in the European discussions and to give our input into the strategic developments. So collaboration at European level is very important. The European Research Area, where it is directly tangible, is also very important. The ESFRI Forum, for example, is really a successful example of real, live, better cooperation at European level. Other than that, we've talked about from paper to action. I think it's a very good chance that now the trio presidency of Germany, Portugal, and Slovenia has really set its aims on bringing ERA forward in moving from paper to action to a certain extent. That's my personal perception, perhaps. And I think it's important because we see here that for artificial intelligence, we need to step up our collaboration. We need to really get to a new level of better cooperating at national, at regional level, between the research stakeholders, the industry players, etc. And I think for that it is indeed useful to step up ERA and to strengthen it.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also about carefully identifying those fields where Europe is really competitive. It makes little sense to compete in the area of digital economy, I'm afraid, in that particular field. Some of the others, the United States in particular, are far ahead. The same, by the way, applies to digital communication. We all use video conferences these days, and basically every system which is on the market is an American system. But there is other exciting application fields where Europe could really make a difference. And I just name a few again. Digital health, large open field, but we must enter into it. The entire issue of climate change, climate mitigation, climate adaptation, probably one of the most daunting challenges ahead of us, but we must go for it. Transformation into energy systems of the future is another sort of classical examples. But I mean, the race is up. I think this is extremely competitive, and we must bring our act together. Roberto mentioned that, by the way. The same applies to quantum computing. If we don't start quantum computing now in a massive effort, we just will not be competitive anymore with the Americans or the Chinese. So it's really time to act.
And also an outlook where Europe could be in a certain time if everything goes well. Is there anything else we should mention? Brief last words.
No, I think I found this a very enriching discussion, and I would like to thank all the panelists very, very much for bringing very different perspectives into this debate. So now, from my side, thank you very much. Thank you, Christina, very much indeed. And now I think it's time indeed to move forward and to now discuss what next steps should be. But normally we should now have a drink and discuss, but next year.
We still have our panelists, and we can still see them, and they are smiling at this point. I can translate that to the viewers online. Well, thank you very much for your remarks and this outlook as well. And so we virtually give a hand to all our participants who have contributed today. And we say goodbye to all our viewers who come from Germany, but also really outside of the European Union, like 2%, I mentioned that on the poll. And we have learned that most of our viewers came from science with 66%, but also from the European institutions, 10% of the viewers, just to give you this impression as well. And we say goodbye with an impression of how it looks after all this policy talk when AI and art go hand in hand with data animations from HIDA, the Helmholtz Information and Data Science Academy. Enjoy. So our time is up, and hopefully you want to continue discussing the topic. Feel free to get in touch with the Helmholtz office. And thank you very much for having joined us. We appreciate you followed the invitation. Have a good day.